Thrilled to be here. Vikas, thank you so much for partnering with Semafor on the World Economy Summit, but also to give a sense of the responsibilities that this gentleman has, just the scale of what you're doing. And it feels like you're almost advising every single company on the planet on some of it. It must feel like that to you when you're feeling very tired after traveling like crazy all the time.
Absolutely. It's large, it's wide, and expanded.
So Vikas is the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer and is right in the heart center of these conversations with companies about deploying artificial intelligence, AI as a tool for efficiency. And of course, so no better position to be able to answer the question of where AI is actually changing the game in real ways, creating new sources of competitive advantage or revenue streams, not just cost savings, because everyone hears about cost savings, everyone hears about save time, but what about revenue streams and competitive advantage?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we've observed is everybody is very, very focused on super automation, but they're not as focused on super intelligence. And how do you really get smarter with this technology? And how is this technology going to make your people smarter to generate more revenue generating ideas, whether that's directly with your customer or whether that's new service lines that you could be launching and things that you can be doing from that standpoint. We also find that there's a lot of tone from the top, in terms of organizations and CEOs that are really embracing this and people that are following along. But I think that where organizations are leaning in to show how these tools can help you think differently, can help you really expand how you think and multiply your ability to see around corners, that's where we're seeing organizations really take the turn in using the technology differently.
So super automation versus super intelligence. I think it's a very clever frame for sort of describing what percentage of your clients are doing the former versus the latter?
I would tell you 80% are focused on super automation because everybody is obsessed with cost. Everybody's obsessed with cost out. They're obsessed with what we hear about being able to replace large operational functions, whether that's in the finance department, it's in the HR department, it's with banks and compliance. And it is a good use case, and it is a good area that we're going to see significant transformation in. But we think there's just as much opportunity on just how it's going to make financial advisors smarter, how it's going to make investment bankers be able to put a better prospectus together, how it's going to transform supply chains, and how you can use it to think ahead of your supply chain problems. And I think that's where the reasoning models can really help you think about things differently.
And so for the 20% that are doing super intelligence, is that because there's a CEO at the top who's saying, hey, let's not just look at AI from a cost reduction perspective, but let's look at it from more creative revenue-focused purposes?
Absolutely. I think some of the best practices we've seen is where they really take AI out of the IT organization, and they've thought about AI as a business function that's going to transform the business. IT is there to build the foundation, to get the tools, to get the technology right, and there is responsibility in the business with line leaders and with AI leaders who are really there to think about how this is fundamentally going to transform their business, thinking about this technology as electricity that's going to flow through everything that you do.
And will there one point down the future when AI has been able to sort of take out all the costs possible, would those ratios be flipped where 80% will be on super intelligence and 20% on automation?
I think so. I think you're going to see
how far away would that be?
I think the pace of change is I think going to be driven by smaller competitors coming in who do this stuff. I think that's where we see a lot of new startups focus. They're focused on those super intelligence use cases because they see a market opportunity there. And I think a lot of what we miss too is the new economies that are going to be created. So when you think about what AI is going to do to allow financial advice to happen to people who could never afford it, consulting to come to people who could never afford it, farmers who can get better information who couldn't, that's going to just spur so much growth potentially in those sectors at a different level. That's also going to spur a lot of business opportunity for businesses that can keep up.
Fascinating. And from a boardroom perspective, what are the blind spots that you're seeing that CEOs may have on AI right now, either risks or missed opportunities that could potentially undermine competitiveness?
Yeah, look, one is figuring out the accountability layer. I think we hear a lot about these POCs that never make it to production, and one of the root causes that we see is just around who is accountable. And the accountability can't just sit with technology, and it needs to sit with the business owner or the functional owner to actually get the adoption that you need. I still see a lot of people that are working off old scorecards, and I think the scorecards have changed. Even looking at us as a consulting business, like us and lawyers have used utilization and billable hours for years to judge how we look at performance and how we look at an individual, and AI kind of flips that. Like, you don't need to just measure somebody on the hours that they build, but you want to measure somebody on the productivity that they provided and how they use the AI to do that. So that creates a whole new set of metrics that you really need to look at and think about as you think about where your business is going to scale.
And who's responsible for creating those new metrics?
I think that's the open question, right? And that's where it's got to be. That's where IT is not the one who's just laying the foundation. Is not going to do that. The business has to do that. But then you need the right skills and expertise in your business, because sometimes it's not their traditional HR leader who's going to be able to do it on their own. You need somebody with that AI passion and that AI expertise, really advising and empowered to help make those changes from the executive level down.
And inevitably, is it mostly coming from, is that type of work coming more likely to happen in companies where the CEO is driving the adoption?
Absolutely. The culture has to happen top down. It has to be a priority, and that becoming an AI native company has to be something that the entire executive team thinks about and is obsessed about if it's going to happen, because there is so much with, I think, people and the lack of agency with AI, the fear of it taking your job, that if people aren't seeing the optimism and the excitement from the top down, you have so many headwinds against you from getting to where you need to get with adoption.
And what about the workforce? Obviously, our partners here at Gallup are one of the most advanced trackers of sort of workforce trends. And when it comes to redesigning workforces, reskilling people so that AI actually boosts productivity without burning out culture or talent, what are you seeing there?
I think the biggest thing is teaching people the new muscle that they need to use to kind of to challenge and review the knowledge that's coming out of AI. That's where we're heavily investing in all of our associates and all of our seniors, up to our partners, to teach them how do you use this stuff to become more productive, how do you go and how do you even question and have the objectivity to look at the information that's coming out of AI, know what to rely on, know what to challenge, how to prompt in different ways, and even with our partners, how do they dream and imagine and create prototypes and actually show things that they wouldn't have otherwise, and kind of get off of PowerPoint decks.
So our friend from OpenAI, the chief economist, was saying that if he wants to learn this the most rapidly, he goes to the 24-year-olds at OpenAI. Is that the same thing at PwC, where you have the partners
absolutely
bringing in the first year?
It was funny. I had a team of associates in with me just telling me about how they talk to their assistant, like how they actually converse with the AI. And and I started doing it. I started in the morning. I would get back from a run, and I would actually talk to my AI and start talking to it. And it's a very unnatural thing. The first few times you do it, you're kind of like, what are you doing? Like you're sitting there, you're talking to you put it in conversation mode and you're going through it. But then you start to get used to it. You can sit there on your way back and you can write emails, you can brainstorm, you can do different things, and it starts to become very natural. But the idea came from a group of college kids who were just starting, and I said, what are you using this stuff for, and how are you using it?
Fascinating. And lastly, just last question, we've talked about a number of things, but what broadly are other strategies, other key things that you're seeing companies do now to get ahead in this space?
Absolutely. So I think one thing is just this obsession with the last mile. So it's really it's very easy to get 80, 90% there. It's hard to get to the last 10, 15%. And when you think about getting this stuff to adopt at scale, you have to really see it through all the way. And that string is really thinking about the things that you develop, the adoption that you're getting, and then the financial impact, both top line and bottom line, that it's having, and making sure you're pulling that string all the way through. I also think that it's not good enough to follow on this topic, that any major organization needs to be thinking about leading and thinking about how they are partnering with these hyperscalers and with others that are coming up with these technologies. And we're seeing this all the time right now, that people are jumping ahead in this agentic world that's going to be coming at us, and how they're thinking about new ideas and different things. Like, we just saw the payment protocols put out. We saw a company that went in and actually said, hey, people can go check out and now buy items from us. I think we are merely months away from the first bank being able to just open up an account through these chat interfaces. And I think it's just going to change how people interact in the world, and your business model has to be ready for it.
Great. Well, listen, thank you so much for your insights. Please join me in thanking Vikas for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.